So I'm pretty hard on church leaders and really what I would call here in the area I live in, the suburban gospel people, the dudes that everything they talk about is Jesus, and they want the world to see them as these perfect men, but they don't have discipline. They don't really lead their family. They do it online by posting all these pictures with their so-called Christian uniforms, but when it really comes down to it, they're not leading. And you don't have to memorize scripture or be at church every Sunday to really be a Christian or really be a follower of Jesus. I've had two different guys on the show within the last month tell me they believe in God, but they're not Christian. And it's hard for me to wrap my brain around that, but I think where they're going with it is they love God, they have a relationship with Him, but they don't go to church. And the older I get, the more I understand that. But I do think church is important, because I do think you need a fellowship with like-minded individuals. You need a group of people for support if you're lucky to find a church that does that. So this isn't me bashing church, but one thing I wanted to just bring up why I'm even doing this video. My son and I had this really in-depth conversation last night, and oddly enough, it all started with him misbehaving in a way I'm not going to get onto on here, but I had to correct him. I had to leave the room and take a deep breath, because the old version of myself would have just exploded. And if you co-parent, you probably understand this. Sometimes dads have to do things that are probably seen as soft by society because of a co-parenting situation. I'm not going to touch on that too much. But anyways, I came back in his room, and we started talking about the Bible. We started talking about Jesus, and it veered into a subject that opened up a doorway to darkness. And we talked about the enemy. And I'm going back to my original point. A lot of churches nowadays don't talk about Satan. They don't acknowledge him. They don't acknowledge evil, and they don't acknowledge spiritual warfare. I have my own thoughts on that. Ultimately, it doesn't sell tickets. You're not going to fill a church building that holds 10,000 people if you talk about Satan and you talk about why Jesus really died on the cross. Now, if you talk about all the good things, all God's love, all the blessings, which are still important, you're going to fill more seats. You're going to sell more tickets, per se, with your rock band, with your, tithing. People are going to donate to a church where they feel good about themselves. But when you talk about the reality of Christianity and the fact that we're at war, that we have an enemy that wants to destroy us, he's a thief. His mission is to kill and destroy the children of God, which we're all children of God. People don't want to hear that. It scares them. Look at music today. Look at what people listen to. There's a reason metal is not mainstream anymore. People are afraid of it. They're afraid to get their hands dirty. They're afraid to do hard work. They're afraid to have the discipline it takes to live a life for Christ, to really live for Him, when it's easier just to live for the world. So my son last night gave the most accurate description of Satan I've ever heard in my life. And I'm going to try to get him to say it again so I can get it on camera. And I would love to hear your take on it, because my son is not even 8 years old yet. And he describes Satan in a way that I have never heard before. He is spot on. And I don't even know where he got this from. We've had a lot of conversations, but the words out of his mouth were never spoken by me. He said it. And it was one of those moments where we went from just a parenting moment, a correction moment for something he did wrong, to him speaking words of wisdom at 7 years old that grown men don't have the balls to say in a pulpit. They get paid to be shepherds of men by a church. Folks, Christianity is a relationship. It's not a ritual. Like I said, church is important if you find the right one. But read, study, communicate with God on your own time, and build a relationship, because it's far more important. Peace, Power, and Purpose Podcast. Let me know what you think in the comments, and stay tuned for more in-depth episodes on what it really means to be a Christian. God bless you guys.